Bonjour mes amis, je m'appelle Tito, je fais des vidéos sur les finances personnelles sur mon autre chaîne, mais sur cette chaîne je parle d'autres choses comme aujourd'hui où je vais revoir le film The Origin, Madame Coin Coin, Chapter 1, The Awakening. That's quite a mouthful. When a vengeful spirit stalks and attacks members of a community, the local police and students and staff of a local Catholic secondary school try to get to the bottom of the murders. Madame Koi Koi is based on an urban legend popular amongst many girls who attended boarding schools in West Africa in the 1990s of a zombie-like woman who roams the halls of hostels at night preying on victims. Now, 3 or 4 things really quickly. First of all, hopefully this review will be shorter than usual because part 2 of this movie will be coming out in a few days, so I will be back to review part 2 as well. So I don't want to do a long part 1 review and a long part 2 review. Secondly, this review will contain spoilers because this film is on Netflix. So if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want spoilers, I suggest you stop watching this review and go and watch the movie and come back. Third, I was actually invited for the press and media screening of this film the day before it came out, and it was a lovely event. The refreshments were flowing, and I said to myself that if I thought this movie isn't good, at least I'll talk about how awesome this press and media screening was. It was a nice crowd, the drinks were nice, the food was nice, I had a good time, I saw a couple of friends, I quite enjoyed myself, and the movie itself wasn't too bad, as you will find out subsequently, right? Finally, I didn't hear much about this movie before it came out. I didn't have high hopes either. I think I only heard about it from my friend Rachel Isaac. What's up, Rachel? She's in the movie, and yeah, like I said, she's the only one I pretty much heard this movie about, or heard about this movie from. That said, guys, let's dive into it, beginning with Les Performances. Now, one of the most refreshing things about this movie is that there are so many new faces in the movie. There are also established actors in the film, but they have the supporting roles. The main roles are played by these newer actors, and I really liked that. First of whom was Martha Ehinome. Let me just make sure I got that right. Yes, Martha Ehinome. She plays Amanda, this young girl who is admitted to this school newly and who has dreams about Madame Coin Coin. She doesn't know why, and for some reason she's not telling people about her dreams. But Martha did a good job. I feel like we didn't get to see a lot of her in this first part because her role will be maybe more prominent in part 2. But I liked, those scenes where she wakes up from the dream, or she's in the dream being chased by Madame Coin Coin, or she's paralyzed and all that. That takes a level of, skill to act those types of scenes, right? Or act in those types of scenes. So Martha did a good job. Now to the more prominent younger actors in the film, who we get to see a bit more of in this first installment. Chuks Joseph plays Lashe. Shout out to him and the other actors who play the boys in his gang. The characters that were Ido, Kayode, and Tokumbo. Chuks Joseph plays Lashe, the leader, the ringleader in that group. And something that's really good about this film is how relatable it feels, because many of us that watched this film or will watch this film will find that many of the characters remind us of people in secondary school. The cool kids, the bad boys, the bad girls, and all that. And Chuks Joseph and the other actors that played the boys in his gang, they were very believable, and I'm sure many of us were able to just picture guys like them back in the days when we were in secondary school. And Lashe's character was very despicable. He really communicated that and passed that across. Fun fact, I watched this film via a virtual watch party the day it came out. I saw it at the press and media screening, but the day it actually came out, that evening I had a watch party, or was part of a watch party with friends from overseas. And after the movie, when we were back on the group chat, everyone was talking about how much they hated Lashe and how, he triggered, how the women in the group, said that he triggered things in them. And I think that's just a testament to really good acting, for people to actually despise a character or despise your character and for it to evoke all kinds of emotions within them. So, shout out to Chuks Joseph. Shout out to Ejiro Onajaife as well, who played Ibukun, who was the victim of the boys, when they took advantage of her in that room, the 4 of them. Shout out to her, because playing that kind of scene, that's very emotionally charged and it's quite physical as well. And then also being in emotionally charged scenes with Ireti Doyle's character, Mother Superior, who was like just gaslighting her and all that whenever she came to, or when they discussed the incident. Ejiro did a very good job. And someone reminded me, I think while I was actually watching the film at the screening, someone said that this young lady, they've seen her before, wasn't she in, the person said Glamour Girls, but then I put two and two together and I was like, no, it wasn't Glamour Girls, it was Domitila. She was actually in Domitila. And it was then that I realized that these actors playing these kids in the movie, they're not kids, these are adults. The funny thing is just that when we wear school uniforms, all of us look so much younger than we actually are. Now let me talk about the more established actors in the film, like Ireti Doyle, who played Mother Superior. By and large, my favorite performance in this film. You see Ireti Doyle in different films, but I don't think I've seen her as prominently in any other film in recent times as I did in this film, and with such a unique character, playing this Catholic nun or mother who is the administrator of this school and who is such a toxic human being. My goodness, I loved the performance. I hated that character so much, but she was really good. And then I'll talk about this perhaps, well, if I talk about it now, there'll be no point talking about it when I say what I liked about the film. The Yoruba dialogue between herself and Jude Chukwuka, who was the Baba Fawole in the film. I loved when they were speaking Yoruba together, essentially, and it flowed so well. It was so natural. I loved the dialogue. I loved the acting. I loved the character. Shout out to Ireti Doyle. If she gets nominations from her performance in this film, I, for one, will be quite pleased. Moving on to Jude Chukwuka. It's funny because formerly Chioma Akpotha, now Chioma Chukwuka. Chioma Chukwuka is also in the film. But coming back to Mr. Jude. Jude Chukwuka plays Baba Fawole, this older gentleman who is, I think, a staff of the school, he's familiar with what's going on. You know, apparently Madam Koin had been in the area years earlier, and he's putting the pieces together in this film. It's hard to see Mr. Jude in any film and not to be taken or enthralled by his performance. His performance wasn't that outrageous in this first installment. I hope it will be more out there and more flamboyant in part 2, but he was really good in this film. And like I said earlier, the dialogue between himself and Ireti Doyle, I loved those scenes. I think those are some of my favorite scenes in the film, and I really liked his performance. You know, being this cool-headed older man who is also quite worried and who is like stricken with fear at certain points when he gradually realizes what's going on in the area, seeing that Madam Koin is coming back. Chioma Chukwuka. You know, she doesn't say much in this film. She eventually says she gets lots of a few speaking lines further on in the film, towards the end, when Omowunmi Dada's character is introduced, right? But the fact that she plays Sister Ruth, who is just silent, always in the chapel, just praying, being able to do a moving performance or a good enough performance as a character who barely speaks in the film, that takes a skilled actor to pull that kind of thing off. And who else but Chioma Chukwuka? Incidentally, the strength of her performance, typically, earlier this year in Gangs of Lagos, was in her monologue, or her just being able to express herself through her words. But interestingly enough, she has now shown that she's able to emote and give a fantastic performance without even saying much at all. You know, that scene where herself and Jude Chukwuka, are in the chapel and he's giving her an update, telling her that, look, it looks like that creature is back. And we just see the fear or the worry in her face. That was very powerful. Chioma Chukwuka, if you've seen her in other films, I don't need to convince you of how great an actor the woman is. Ce que j'ai aimé. Bruh, there were so many things that I liked about this film. Let me try and breeze through them. First of all, production design and art direction. Shout outs to the production designer on this project, Ashana Faya Oluwaseun. I wonder if he's a smoker. That sounds like the name of somebody that smokes a lot. Anyway, he was the art director and production designer on this project. Now, art direction and production design is basically how a film or a production looks physically, right? From, the things that you're seeing, like the clothes, the colors, the textures, the furniture, all those things. That's what production design largely is part of. And it encompasses a few other things too, like lighting and also sound design. And I think the visuals in this film, from the way things looked, it was just really good. And I'm sure if you're paying attention, you'd have noticed as well. The sound design in this film was actually very good. For horror films, sound design and sound editing are very important because they really do. Sound does a lot in terms of amping up the fear factor. Because most of the time in horror films, you don't see the thing that people are scared of or that they want you to be scared of, you the viewer, but you hear it. And you hear like things like rustling of the wind, leaves, the music, heavy breathing, all those things. Sound is incredibly important in horror films. Dare I say they got it really well in this film. Everything was just working sound-wise in this movie. It was brilliant. The lighting in this film was amazing. Lighting is also very important in horror films. And you guys don't understand how challenging it is to light scenes that are done in the forest, especially in Nigeria, because you have to have your subject well lit, and then there are foreground elements, background elements. Sometimes you may need to replicate the moon or the blue light of the moon and all that. It's challenging, but they did it really well in this film. And it's also challenging in a country like Nigeria because for all those lights, you need a generator because you're outdoors and you're probably far from power supply. So there are probably gens that need to power those lights, and then the sound of those gens many times gets into the microphones. So it's just challenging, right, to light scenes in the forest, sufficiently. But they did it really well in this film. They did it really well. Everything was appropriately lit. Things that were in the dark, like in the scene where Omowunmi Dada's character is, I'm trying to avoid words that YouTube will flag, but the final scene where the three men, pounce on Omowunmi Dada's character, we don't really see their faces. Their faces are like covered in shadow, right? And that's all quite intentional. But generally, the lighting, and not just in the forest scenes, other scenes in the school, in Mother Superior's office, the lighting was just fantastic. You get the point. The hair and makeup was really good, and the costume as well. Deyemi, when we first see him and he's in the Beatles just before he steps out and he pats down his afro, that was cool. The afro looked quite authentic. The outfits in the film looked, to the time, or to the times rather, that the film was depicting, which was, it starts with 1991, but also, as you know, we go down to 1971, 20 years earlier, but the outfits did reflect that era in history. The pacing was good. I like that they didn't rush scenes. Like, they didn't rush us into a scene or rush us into introducing us to a character and then rushing out. For example, that whole Deyemi passing his hair, in the mirror before he steps out of the car when we're first introduced to him. If they were rushing this movie, he wouldn't have done that. He would have just gotten to the scene, come out of the car. But they take their time. They let scenes breathe, and they let us get to know many of these characters. And it really did help to move the story along, or to support the story. Which brings me to the next point. The storytelling in this film was quite good. I like how the story was conveyed. You know how at the end of the film, when we see how Madame Coin Coin becomes Madame Coin Coin after Omowunmi Dada's character is abused, and she moves slowly towards that evil tree. When the movie was over, someone sitting next to me said, "Why didn't they just show us that at the beginning?" You would think, normally that's what they do. They'd show that scene and then the rest of the movie would progress. But I like how they saved that till the end. It was different, it was engaging, and it helped us put pieces together gradually towards the tail end of the film. It helped with the suspense. Plus, it helped to set things up for part 2, when chapter 2 comes out in a few days. And speaking of those scenes of, emotional and physical abuse, I like that this film was bold to address those things, or to show those things in riveting ways. Those scenes were actually quite moving, and they're triggering. Even while we're watching the film, people around me, particularly women, were saying how triggering this film was, and how it was, stirring things up in them, and certain memories and whatnot. And also other people I know who have seen the film have talked about how it triggered them slightly, or reminded them of things that they may have gone through in the past, or people that they know may have gone through in terms of abuse. I like how they didn't shy away from those topics or those scenes in this film. They went there. right? So, and I mean, there was no reason why they shouldn't have. I mean, it's daring filmmaking and it's bold filmmaking, and I really did like that. I also liked the sets and the props in this film. That's like part of production design. I believe I mentioned that earlier. I liked that this film was just the right amount of scary. You know, people like me that are averse to horror films, I don't do horror films, I don't have the stomach for them. This film is a horror film, but, and I asked this of people that I saw the film with after the, in the virtual watch party. After we saw it, when we got back on the group chat, I asked them on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the fear factor or the horror elements of this film? And most people gave it like a 3. I think the average was a 3, and I think I gave it a 3 or a 3.5. So it's just enough for the film to pass across the message without it being super scary or giving people nightmares. Finally, I liked the camera work in this film. The cinematography in the film is fantastic, but I really did like the camera work, especially when we watched it during the press and media screening. The first time that the character Amanda wakes up from the nightmare where she sees Madame Coin Coin, and the camera does that. I think it's a barrel roll where the camera just rolls with her as she sits up, as she wakes up from the dream. We actually, a few of us clapped when that happened, when we were watching it at the press and media screening, because that's such, you see that a bit in foreign films, or you don't see it very much in Nollywood films. I don't know why, maybe it's a bit ambitious or it takes a lot. I was so glad that they did that, and like I said at the screening, we clapped because hey, it came in at the right time. It's because that kind of shot, you don't just put it in your film willy-nilly. You put it when it deserves to, when it will make a huge impact, when it deserves to be in the story or to be in the film. You don't just waste that kind of thing. They use that shot at the right time in the film. There are so many other creative and tasteful camera angles and shots in the film. Like I said, once again, the cinematography in the film was actually quite brilliant. Is there any other thing? I think I mentioned the Yoruba dialogue between Ireti Doyle and Jude Chukwuka's characters in the film. I really, really loved those scenes. Those are some of my favorite scenes in the film, when Ireti Doyle and Jude Chukwuka were speaking to each other in Yoruba. I mean, the gaslighting, the fluent and fluid Yoruba. I don't think I've seen Ireti Doyle speak Yoruba in a film before. It was just beautiful. So, I mean, those are just a few of the things that I liked about this film. Ce que je n'ai pas aimé. There was nothing about this film that I did not like. However, I did find myself at the end of the film wishing that we actually did get to see Madame Coin Coin, like in proper lighting and everything. But I see how they're probably saving that till part 2, to build up the anticipation. But yeah, apart from that, nothing about the film that I didn't like. Qui devrait le voir? I think if you're a patient movie watcher and you don't mind a movie like taking its time, I think you'll enjoy this movie. Also, if you schooled in Nigeria, if you did your secondary school education in Nigeria, particularly in the 90s, this film will give you a huge jolt of nostalgia. So yeah, if you want that emotion, I think you should see the film as well. Also, if you want to see some good cinematography and some good storytelling in a Nollywood film or from a Nollywood film, then I think you should see the movie. Who shouldn't see this film is people who might be triggered by certain themes or elements of this film. This film borders heavily on sexual abuse and emotional abuse. So if you're, if you've had that kind of, if you've had things like that happen in your past to yourself or someone dear to you, and you're easily triggered or you don't want to come near anything that may trigger you, then maybe you might want to avoid this movie. In conclusion, if you guys couldn't tell already, I thoroughly enjoyed this film. It was such a pleasant surprise. I love it when I see a film where I have no expectations of the film and the film actually blows me away. I was literally on the edge of my seat as I watched this film. I was like this, And I love that the film was evoking all types of emotions from people that I was seeing the film with. They were commenting, they're talking about how terrible certain characters were. They're talking about how, certain things reminded them of when they were in school or experiences that they had. It was a nice one, and I'm glad I've seen it both at the cinema for the press screening and on streaming as well, and I'm looking forward to seeing part 2. Shout out to the cast, fantastic cast. Shout out to the crew. You know, I mean, everyone behind the camera, the cinematographers, the DOP, the set designer, production designer, hair and makeup units, everyone did a fantastic job. The writers, this film was written by the director of the film, Franklyn Jituboh. So he directed, I think he co-produced and he co-wrote as well. And the other writer in the film, or of the film, was Boladele Falola. They wrote a spectacular film, and I hope that when we see part 2 in a few days, everything, you know, ends or culminates well. I hope they either keep the pace of part 1 or they even amp it up a little bit more to make things more intriguing, but I hope everything just ends on a fantastic note. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing chapter 2 of this movie. Shout outs to the cast and crew of this film. I'm so happy for them. I mean, when I watched this film on, what day was it? I believe that was Monday or Tuesday, or whatever day that was. I remember saying at the press and media screening on my Insta stories that this film is going to get to #1 on Netflix in Nigeria before the weekend. And it's not the weekend yet, and it's already done that. I'm so happy for the success that they've achieved with this film, and I'm looking forward to chapter 2. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Look out for the review of chapter 2. Hopefully I'll be as happy when I'm doing that one as I was doing this review. Check out my other reviews of other Nollywood films that I've reviewed in recent times. To check them out, you can click the card in the corner of the screen. On this channel, I don't just do Nollywood movie reviews. Sometimes I talk about relationships. I also have a podcast, which used to be on this channel but has moved to its own channel. To check that out, or to be linked to that, you can click the card in the corner of the screen as well, or you can check the description box down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure, in YouTube custom or in YouTube fashion, to like this video by clicking on the like button. That's very important. And to subscribe to my channel as well by clicking on the black subscribe button. Now guys, I was going to say something. Yes, the description box down below will have other details. I have my podcast channel, which you'll find in the description box as well, and in the card in the corner of the screen. I feel like there's something I'm forgetting. Whatever it is, I'll say it in the review of chapter 2 of Madam Coin Coin. Thank you guys so much for watching. Yes, I remembered. Yeah. If you've seen the origin, Madam Coin Coin, let me know what you thought about it by leaving me a comment in the description box. It's not in the description box, in the comment section down below. I'm really curious to hear if you guys enjoyed the film, what you liked about it. I actually know 1 or 2 people who didn't finish watching the film because it wasn't doing anything for them. I was shocked. I was like, this film is brilliant. How can you just stop it midway because it's not giving? I believe that was the term she used. Anyway, let me know what you guys thought about the film in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for the final time. I will catch you real soon in the next one. Take care. Guys, I got so carried away with the review that I forgot to actually rate the movie. Anyway, on account of the very bold storytelling, the beautiful cinematography, the lovely production design, and the great cast of, you know, fresh faces as well as some more established actors, I give this film, The Origin, Madam Coin Coin, the chapter 1, The Awakening, 4.5 jollofs over 5. Now, only the second film to achieve such a high rating on this channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think about the rating in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys real soon, in a few days in fact, when chapter 2 comes out. Take care.